The Ravens are now 4-2 after defeating yet another NFC opponent with Lamar Jackson under center. The Ravens sent the Washington Commanders home with their second loss of the season after a game that saw big plays made by both teams, while at the same time an odd sense of control throughout most of the game by the Ravens on both sides of the ball. Jayden Daniels played as well as advertised going into this game, and his connection with wide receiver Terry McLaurin is evident and strong. The Ravens, however, proved to be the better team throughout the day, and while Zay Flowers was one of the shining stars in this matchup, having a career day, the performances by some other Ravens may be underestimated in how impactful they could be for this team. The Ravens' streak of scoring more points in every game may have ended, but in my mind, they undoubtedly had their most balanced and complete win today as a team. Let's get to it. Welcome in, everyone. This is Jordan with Ravens Flash Report, and if you're excited about the Ravens' Week 6 win, give this video a like. If you're a Ravens fan and you're new around here, go ahead and subscribe, and comment down below your reactions to this game. The game of football is played out on the field between the white lines by the players, not on a computer screen where guys like me try to tell you how good or bad a team or player is based on numbers alone. Having said that, it is indeed a very rare thing to look at a box score and almost immediately understand a lot about how this game went and who the better team was. Not only do the Ravens have the advantage in almost every team statistic, total yards, passing yards, rushing yards, and even penalties for once, the players at the top of each individual category are Ravens players. The best quarterback today was Lamar Jackson. The better running back, Derrick Henry. And while a debate could be made that Terry McLaurin's 2 touchdowns superseded the career day of Zay Flowers, I think the impact of Zay was felt more by the Commanders than McLaurin's was by the Ravens. For the Commanders, Jayden Daniels had another solid performance, going 24 of 35 for 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no picks, while sacked 3 times. His 110.3 passer rating was his second highest on the season, and he was even the leading rusher for this team in the absence of Robinson with 6 carries for 22 yards. The other 2 backs, Eckler and McNichols, had quiet days as the Commanders fell victim to this Ravens' incredible run defense, holding the second-best rushing team in the league to a mere 52 yards on the ground. The Commanders' passing attack was consistent with what we saw coming into this game, as multiple pass catchers contributed fairly evenly throughout the day, with the exception of Terry McLaurin, who had both of Daniels' passing touchdowns. Overall, this feels like a very complete team, and if the Ravens had shown up and played the way they did against the Raiders in Week 2, I think the Commanders would have walked out of Baltimore with a win. Luckily for us fans, this Ravens team is looking dangerous. Like I said in the beginning, if you only look at the box score, it might seem like Lamar, Henry, and Flowers were the only players to have great days for the Ravens. Truth be told, though, this win was by far the most evenly distributed as far as multiple players impacting the outcome that we've seen all year. Lamar Jackson goes 20 for 26 for 323 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, which was not his fault but will go down on his stat sheet, and he was sacked twice. His passer rating of 114.7 was only his 4th best on the season, and his 40 rushing yards on 11 carries were not only his lowest in yards, but also yards per carry. I'm not saying Lamar Jackson had a bad day, but the standard that Lamar has set for himself at this point is unbelievably high. It's incredible, actually. He throws for over 300 yards with 77% accuracy, has a passer rating of 114 while adding 40 yards on the ground, and that's a bad day for Lamar? That's just how good he is. A career day for a lot of other quarterbacks is mediocre for Lamar Jackson, and that's why he's a 2-time MVP. This season, however, he's had other stars that could legitimately help carry the load that he has burdened almost entirely by himself since 2019. Derrick Henry finishes the day with 24 carries for 132 yards and 2 touchdowns in what was another dominating performance. So dominating, in fact, that we hardly ever saw Hill get any action, recording only 1 carry for 2 yards and 1 reception for 2 yards. Another side note about Derrick Henry is that pitch that goes out to the left has been dominant and backbreaking for 2 teams in as many weeks, and is something that other teams are going to have to be prepared for when facing the Ravens going forward. The Ravens' pass catchers, though, is the topic that I'm most interested in after watching this game. Zay Flowers finishes the day with 132 yards as well, but through the air, catching all 9 of his targets and looking impossible to contain for the second week in a row. And while Zay's performance was awesome to watch and reaffirms many of us fans that we drafted finally a true number one wide receiver, the supporting cast behind him is also the best that we've ever seen in this Ravens offense. Rashad Bateman catches all 4 of his targets for a season-high 71 yards. Mark Andrews has by far the best game of his season, catching 3 of his 4 targets for 58 yards in his first touchdown on the year. Isaiah Likely was quiet with 2 catches for 27 yards, but just like Nelson Aguilar, who also only had 1 catch for 25 yards, the plays that they did make were crucial in keeping Ravens drives alive in this game. Plain and simple, this was without a doubt the most complete performance I think we've seen from this Ravens offense when looking at the run game and the pass game working well together and causing opposing defenses to not know where the ball was going at any point and being unable to stop either regardless. Before we get to the Ravens defense, there's another player on this team who had a solid day, and that's Justin Tucker. No, he didn't have to try for a 50-plus yard field goal in this game, but he was 3 for 3, and all of them went right down the middle, just like we expect from the GOAT. Now we can move on to the defense. Honestly, the defense's performance in this game was overall mostly good, with only a few spots of concern. My biggest concern coming out of this game from a defensive standpoint is that we are still allowing pass catchers to get wide open in the middle of the field, 10 to 15 yards beyond the line of scrimmage, with seemingly no one within 5 yards of them. Was Brandon Stevens' performance against McLaurin a concern? No, not really, at least in my opinion. Stevens got beat on a few plays, which is somewhat expected when facing a receiver of Terry's caliber. On the touchdown catch, I thought Stevens was in excellent position and was simply beat by a great catch and an even better throw. I challenge anyone to go back and look at that play, and other than Brandon getting his head around, tell me what else he could have done to stop that touchdown. It was just an incredible play, nothing more to say about it. The completions to Zach Ertz and Noah Brown over the middle were much more aggravating to me. Something still has to be done from a scheme standpoint to stop these free runners through the middle completely open. Now, on a more positive note, there was probably the second best performance by this defense so far. The 305 total yards, 253 passing yards, and 52 rushing yards were all the third lowest that they've allowed this season, and even though this was the first game that they didn't force a turnover, it was the second lowest score allowed through 6 games. Another big positive that I absolutely have to mention is the pass rush late in the game. I made a point of mentioning this in the game's preview that the Ravens' pass rush is noticeably absent late in games when teams are throwing the ball all over us. In this game, however, that was definitely not the case. Yannick Ngakoue had his first sack since joining the Ravens with 5:15 to go in the fourth, and 4 plays later, Michael Pierce and Nnamdi Madubuike combined for another, which contributed to forcing the Commanders to kick a 49-yard field goal instead of trying to go down for another touchdown, making it 23-30 Ravens, and the Commanders' last possession of the game. This Ravens team is already one of the most dominant in the league, and if they can shore up the few concerns that I've mentioned on defense, they would be the best team in the NFL, and they might already be anyway. Next week's upcoming game is Monday Night Football against Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay. So be on the lookout for my preview video on that matchup a few days from now and my post-game live stream right after the game is over. This was a great win for the team, and I'll leave it at that. So as always, stay safe out there and go Ravens.